How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to this week's Q&A. Like any other time, if you want a chance at one of your questions being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below. Likewise, if there's a question that I've missed, make sure you guys drop the comment down below once again so I could try to catch up on all those questions. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question of the week. And what are the trans fluid replacement procedures on or intervals on a severe versus normal driving conditions? I already covered in a maintenance video on what I think the Honda algorithm's issue is, and it's how it's not aggressive enough. Although that video was in most normal type conditions. So I think this question was specific to like a pilot or a ridgeline possibly doing some off-roading conditions. So if you know you're doing any sort of driving like that, or a lot of sand or snow or whatever the case may be, where there is a huge burden on the transmission and the powertrain as a whole, then absolutely you should be changing the fluids more often. Not just the transmission, but the transmission being priority along with the other drivetrain fluids. So in this case, if you're going off-roading and depending on the length or the time or the heat, or the cold, any of that really changes everything. I would say no more than every 15,000 miles or so on those fluids. Now, normal conditions, I would say 30,000 miles is probably okay in most cases. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so next question is, what is Honda's protocol on carbon cleaning, specifically in the injector system and the intake valves? And they don't really have a protocol. Now, this would be a dealer by dealer situation. I've tried to convince my dealer to get some sort of injector and intake carbon cleaning system in there, although that still hasn't happened. And I explained to them the severity, the importance, and also how we could also make money by supplying one of these services that if we are not doing, that means somebody else is doing. So not only is it important for the customer, but we're also letting money out the door. But anyways, Honda does not have a protocol per se, although we do have a media blaster that was sent to us for a fit issue regarding excessive carbon buildup on a specific year. I forget what years it was, but yeah, we do have a media blaster. We haven't used one yet, thankfully. I don't think it has the appropriate adapters for any other engine, although with anything else, if we made something, it would work for other applications as well. So if you are interested in doing something like that, hopefully your local Honda dealer offers something along those lines. If not, maybe a Valvoline or an outside shop of some sort offers. I would be very careful with media blasting or walnut blasting, as it could turn very catastrophic. So make sure if you are choosing to do one of those services, that it is somebody who has done a handful of them at least. Don't let it be your first car that this person is trying this on. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so this next question is, are the radars on a 10 Accord trim specific? And yes, they are, not only for the Accords, but for Civics, Pilots, Passports, etc. The whole lineup. Not only the radar on the front lower grille or behind the emblem or to the side like the Civics, but as well as the radar on the camera. I'll try to point to it in my windshield over here. So depending on the trim of vehicle, you'll have one. But even if you do, from trim to trim, they are different. So if you happen to get your one stolen, and I'm going to use this example because I've come across this many times. A lot of people hit me up, hey, my radar was stolen, I already purchased one. First of all, I warn them that whether or not it takes the program, I'm going to charge them, because obviously I spent my time trying to program it, as well as even if it does, and if it's faulty, then regardless, you're going to pay me anyways. But typically what will happen if it is the wrong trim, it'll say mismatched combination of radar and camera. Obviously the camera wasn't touched, so the only other possibility is going to be the radar that customer typically supplied. Now, a lot of times these are on back order because people are electing to choose to steal them, or obviously these body shops sometimes don't want to pay the full pop, so they'll try to find a used one and go about it that route. So a lot of times they will go on back order because eventually, you know, we run out of them and we have to place an order to get the right one for that specific vehicle. So if this does happen to you, just make sure you implement or input your year, your you know, trim, engine size, etc., so you do get the correct one. So hopefully that answers a question for you. So this next question is for the 7th gen Accord V6, and what are some common issues on them? And there is a whole bunch of issues with this generation Accord. Start off with the timing belt tensioner. They fail prematurely. Lower suspension, for example, the compliance bushings and ball joints, they fail very prematurely. The struts seem to be doing pretty okay. The V6 transmissions for that era were pretty weak. I know we have some issues nowadays with them, but it's mostly like juddering and sometimes some torque converters and stuff like that. Back in the day, it was a full-on rebuild. We sent them back to Honda, they rebuilt us, and we put that one in another car, and etc. So obviously those cars came with a lot of power as well, so the engine mounts took a beating all the time, so we're all the time changing those as well. The rear calipers seem to stick. A lot of oil leaks both from the front engine, so the timing belt components, specifically the oil pump, as well as the rear main seal and some valve covers and etc. So yeah, if you're in the market for one of these cars, I would probably stay away from them at this point. Chances are it's gonna have a couple of those issues at this point. The biggest one obviously would be the transmission, because I don't believe Honda sells these reman anymore, and the chances you finding a good one at this point are going to be slim to none. So we've had a couple of instances where we sell used transmissions and we end up putting 2 or 3 in before we find one that is working. So hopefully that answers the question for you. So the last question of the week is, why are we seeing more head gasket failures as well as injector failures on Accords versus the Civics or the CR-V with a similar 1.5T? And I just think that, for example, the Accord, we just see a whole bunch more of them. There's a lot more 1.5Ts versus the other two had an optional engine. Now, the Accord obviously had the 2.0T, but was pretty rare. You know, the Civic base model, which a lot of people like to get, came with the 2.0, and initially the CR-V came with the K24 and the L15. Later on, the L15 was the engine choice of engine across the, you know, the whole trim level. So for that reason, obviously, I think the Accord just had a lot more engines. It's also some changes from engine to engine, software, you know, mechanical changes and stuff like that. So obviously all that takes a toll on them. Also, the Accord is the only one to have an overflow tank versus an expansion tank, which you find both on the Civic and the CR-V, which could absolutely make a difference. I haven't been able to pinpoint that, you know, in any way, shape, or form, but that is one difference that we do see. Now, as far as the injectors, we're seeing them across the whole lineup. Anything 1.5T, we're doing injectors probably 2-3 sets a day. So there is a warranty extension that came out recently. So if you do have one of these engines and you experience some misfiring issues or lean codes, sometimes rich codes, it really depends on how they fail, then I would take it to your local dealer and hopefully it's covered at that point. So as far as the head gasket goes, I just think that there's just, you know, a lot more Accords out there with this engine for the full cycle versus the Civics and your CR-Vs, which had the optional engines at one point or another. So with that being said, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next one.